Daf Gimel Amid Beis. It's 120, 123. If we're in the Shul of Nassan, we would have ordered the new Erevin, the Masechtas Erevin, but now everyone's responsible to make sure they have a Gemara. I can't hear you because you're muted.
How many more blot do we have?
About 20.
Oh,
22, 20.
But Erevin is probably long.
Yeah,
So
but you have to
you
start ordering it now.
You should order them anyways.
Oh, okay.
This way it'll be a chus to get back in, and B, it's a long Gemara, so for sure we'll be in at some point.
Right.
So order them now.
Okay. 20, 40. It's more like 30 pages. Okay. So again, 123b. Kuf Chaf Gimel Amid Beis. We're about 6 lines from the bottom. Amar Rabbi Chanina. It's in the middle of the line. Amar Rabbi Chanina. Rabbi Chanina says, B'mei Nechemya ben Chachiloi ben Chachalia. Nishnas Mishnazu. In the days of Nehemiah, this Mishnah was taught. Nehemiah was, at the beginning of the Second Temple, he was involved in getting permission for the temple to be rebuilt and overcoming all the complications that they had. In those days when they came back to Eretz Yisrael, so people were not keeping Shabbos so carefully. And Nehemiah, they made in those days, in the days of Nehemiah, they made these institutions that everyone should keep Shabbos more carefully. And among those is very strict laws of Muktzah. So the Ksiv, because it says, it says in those days I saw in Yehuda that they were pressing the olives on Shabbos, and they were bringing in the bundles. They were doing regular work on Shabbos. So they instituted special halachas that are extra strict. Okay. Now, which Mishnah is he referring to? The Mishnah that says that it's, originally they said that you can only use 3 utensils. We learned yesterday. It's a Mishnah that said, the knife that cuts the figs, the special ladle, and the table knife. Why only 3 utensils? That's because that Mishnah was taught in the days of Nehemiah. Naftali mentioned this yesterday. That then the laws of Muktzah were much stricter. And then they eased it up as people were more careful with Shabbos. Amar Rabbi Lazar. Rabbi Lazar says Rabbi Lazar is an Amira in Eretz Yisrael. This is Rabbi Lazar ben Pedas. He says, kanin, which are half pipes that are put between the lechem apanim to make sure that they don't get spoiled, they don't get moldy. Makles, sticks. We'll see in a minute what they were used for. In Glustra, also we'll see what that's used for. Umeducha and the mortar and pestle that we learned about yesterday was used for garlic. All of those, kulam kodim ataras kelim nishnu. All of those were taught before they eased up the laws of Muktzah. Or somewhere in the middle of those laws. There were stages to how they eased this up. First they said that you can move kelim that are kelim l'shemalach delahet l'tzerach gufay. Then they said l'tzerach mekaymay. And then they said keli shemalach dela'isa l'tzerach gufay. They didn't say l'tzerach mekaymay, according to Abaya. Or according to Rava, first they said keli shemalach de lahet l'tzerach gufay umekaymay, but not mecham l'tzel. And then they included mecham l'tzel. That means to protect the vessel itself. And then they said, Keli shemalachta le'isr, l'tzarech gufa u'makayim. Okay, so whatever the case is, somewhere before it eased up, these Mishnahs were taught, and we'll see. So, kanin, these half pipes that were put between the breads, the Tanan, it was taught in the Mishnah. Which Mishnah? We're learning a Mishnah that precedes the time that they eased up the laws. As these Mishnahs go back, this is a very interesting Gemara, because there are, the modern scholars would say that all of this was after the destruction of all of this information was after the destruction of the temple. This is throwing us back into the beginning of the second. It's throwing us back 400 years. It's when these Mishnayos were taught was the beginning of the second temple. It's older Mishnayos. It says, when they would put the bread, the showbread, onto the table, it was done on Shabbos. They took away the old ones and they put on the new ones on Shabbos. Now, it was baked before Shabbos, but it was put on the table on Shabbos. Now, when they would put it on, according to this Mishnah, there were pipes. There was like little rods that would go in between the breads so that they didn't press one on another, and the heat would cause them to spoil it, maybe to go moldy or something. So they would let the air go through. That was good. That was better for the bread. So they put these rods in it to allow the ventilation. The Mishnah says, this Mishnah, that they did not put the rods in on Shabbos. They did not take the rods out from the old breads on Shabbos. Erev Shabbos, they took the rods out. That way, on Shabbos, when they came in, they removed the bread from the previous week. The rods were not there. And the same with the new breads. They didn't put them in on Shabbos. They came in Motzei Shabbos. Interesting. They went into the sanctuary on Motzei Shabbos and they inserted the rods into those breads because on Shabbos they weren't allowed to move them. Why weren't they allowed to move them? Because the rods are utensils. There are only a certain amount of utensils you're allowed to use on Shabbos. The limit was 3. They couldn't move these. So this is an ancient Mishnah. During that time, they weren't able to use any utensils. Makles, what are the sticks? Tanan makles daken chalaken hayu. They had these thin sticks that were smooth. They had these sticks. They put them on their shoulders. And on his friend's shoulder. This is talking about the carbon Pesach that was being brought, and it was being brought on. That's a funny picture. Like this time, it was being brought on Shabbos. Now the problem is, we said that they're allowed to skin the animal up to a certain point, but what did they skin it on? So they had these sticks that they would put on from one person to the other person, like a rod, and they would put the animal, they would hang it on that stick, and then they would skin it, I guess with the other hand, or maybe someone else would skin it. So, and Amar Rabbi Lazar, Aimer, it's changed on the side. He says that no, Rabbi Lazar says they weren't allowed to do that on Shabbos. So I'm sorry, I said that the first part was talking about on Shabbos. Rabbi Lazar says the first part was talking about the weekday. Rabbi Lazar says on Shabbos you weren't allowed to use a stick. You had to put your hand on your friend's shoulder, and you would hang the animal over your arm, and he would put his hand on your shoulder, and then you would skin the animal like that. You'd have to skin it down. So, but you weren't allowed to use a stick. Why couldn't you use a stick? Because that was at a time when that was considered muktzah. Okay. the next thing that we said, the next Mishnah that we said, predates the leniencies that came out later about regarding muktzah, that we're allowed to move items that were set aside, or that not specifically set aside, but just any utensils. The next one was glustra. There's a little bit of a complication here, but basically it's some sort of peg or a beam that's locking a door. Now, it happens to be that the top of it is also used to pound garlic. There's like a ball at the end of it. Now, why that's necessary is maybe because it's trying to turn it into a utensil. The problem is that it's not a utensil that's meant for Shabbos. Whatever the case is that its function is as it's a lock. It's something that you stick it, a peg that goes into the door, locks the door. Ditnana was taught nagar sheyesh bereshik lustra. This sort of lock that has on the top of it this round ball, I guess it's used to pound garlic. Rabbi Shua says that you can drag it from one door to another door and use it in a different door. You can't carry it outright, but you can move it around indirectly to lock a different door. Which is interesting, that they weren't allowed to move it directly. Why were they allowed to move it at all? Why were they allowed to move it at all? We have to see. Reb Tarfon says that it's like all the vessels that are that you're allowed to move in the courtyard. Now, this is a little bit of an issue, because what does Reb Tarfon mean? Kol hakelim, all the vessels. We're trying to predate this Mishnah to a time when you weren't allowed to move vessels in the courtyard. Reb Tarfon says, no, you're allowed to move it in the courtyard like all the other vessels. What do you mean all the other vessels? You're not allowed to move vessels. This is an old Mishnah. I'm not sure what the Gemara is saying. It must be just not referring to what Reb Tarfon, and as Rabbi Shua must be quoting an earlier Mishnah, and Reb Tarfon is saying how it is now. That's what it must be. Meducha hadamran. And then when we said about the grinder, the mortar and pestle, that we mentioned already, that if it has garlic in it, then you're allowed to move it. If it doesn't have garlic, and you're not allowed to move it. Why? You wanted to sit on it, you wanted to do something else, something of heter. Why can't you move it? It must be that this predates the time when you were allowed to move kalim, because kelish mlachtelis for another usage. Now, we gave answers to that. We had an answer from Abaya, we had an answer for Rava. We said maybe it was Mechamal Etzel. We already discussed that. The Gemara here thinks that those answers are what's called the doichek. They're not satisfactory answers. And the better answer is that that's just an old Mishnah, that was the old law. Since then it's been updated, and you would be allowed to move it. Amar Rabbi. Rabbi says, commenting on what Rabbi Eliezer, what Rabbi Lazar is doing, Rabbi Lazar the Amira, is saying that these Mishnayos are ancient Mishnayos. They go back to this old law that doesn't exist anymore, because since then we've made it more lenient. Rabbi says, 1 second, how do you know? Can you really prove that these are old Mishnayos? Mimai? From what tells you that this is so? Maybe all of these Mishnayos were said later. Kanim, what's the reason why you don't put the sticks in on Shabbos and take them out on Shabbos? What's the whole reason for it? So that they don't go bad. The bread doesn't go bad. Those rods, you put the half pipes so that the air can get through. During that little time, from Friday night until Shabbos morning, when they would put the bread in, when they would take the bread out. So the old bread isn't going to go bad. They would take the pipes out Friday night, and then they would remove the old bread on Shabbos morning. during that time, during those 12 hours, the bread isn't going to go bad. Then the new bread that they would put in Shabbos morning. And Motzei Shabbos, they would come in and put the new pipes in between the loaves to stack them properly. During those 12 hours, it's not going to go bad either. So because it's not going to go bad, you shouldn't do it if it's not necessary. Now, even though it's mutter, but if it's not necessary, then you still don't do it. Yeah. Even what's coming out from this answer is that even Eily, shemalachta leheter, but if it's not necessary, you still don't move it. Yeah, we don't see people so careful about this. Imagine there's a spoon on the table. So you're sitting over there schmoozing, you take the spoon, you twist it this way, twist it that way, you're just playing while you're talking. Why? It's a Eily. You can't move a Eily shemalachta leheter. It's not l'tzerech gufay. It's not l'tzerech mekayim. It's for no reason. You can't move it.
Does that have to do with a Kaylee's heel or no? Okay, sorry, I don't want to interrupt. I'm sorry. I'll go back
that's a weak spot.
Okay. So it's not. Okay, good. Okay, sorry. Bye.
So, so that would be what's coming out is like an extra chumrah here. That even a Eily shemalachta leheter, you need to have a reason to move it. Makles. What about the sticks that would go from shoulder to shoulder? Efshek Rabbi Lazar. It could be that they hold like Rabbi Lazar, and not like they hold like Rabbi Lazar. It could be that you can do it like Rabbi Lazar says, that you just put your arm across to the other person's shoulder, and it's not necessary to use a stick. So because it's not necessary, you're not supposed to use it. But it's not because it was totally forbidden. If it was necessary, you would be allowed to use those sticks. It's just that it's not necessary because your arm across the other person's shoulder is good enough. Glustra, what about the lock? That we said that you couldn't move the lock directly. You had to move it indirectly. So that's Kid Rabbi Yanai. That goes like Rabbi Yanai. Rabbi Yanai is an Amira in Eretz Yisrael. We're talking about a courtyard that doesn't have an Erev. You know, we always mentioned that a courtyard, if there's more than one family in that courtyard, then you can't carry from the house to the courtyard unless there's an Erev. Erev means that they designated food that they become one family. Designating food that we have a meal together, we eat together. Now they don't actually have to eat it. They just have to put aside food that shows that they're one family. So that means the courtyard really belongs to one family that lives in that courtyard, which is all the people in that courtyard because they've joined together with that food. Now, what are you not allowed to carry if you don't have an Erev? So you're not allowed to carry from the houses to the courtyard. But things that are in the courtyard themselves, they could be moved around. You can't carry from your private house into the courtyard. But even without an Erev, the patio furniture and all of that could be moved around. You just can't take the book that you wanted to read outside into the courtyard, even though it's surrounded by a wall. But just simply because there's another person that lives there that has access to that and it's partial ownership to that. So that's considered from one domain to another domain, unless you join them together with the food. So here we're talking about where it wasn't joined together. Rabbi Yeshua says that there's a little bit of an issue here. That since the lock is in the doorway, what's the doorway? The doorway, although it's not mamish in the house, but it looks like it's in the house. You see, it's half and half. They say, don't come in. I'm in the doorway. So that's inside already. According to Rabbi Yeshua, in the doorway is like inside. So that's why you can't move it. Now, what comes out here is we have a better answer now. It's not mamish inside. It looks like it's inside. That's why you can't move it directly, but you can move it indirectly. This helps. This way that Rabbi's learning this makes it easier to understand this. Otherwise, if the first way, Rabbi Lazar's way of saying it is that it was during a time when you weren't able to move it at all because it was muktzah, so why are we allowed to move it indirectly? Was there a heter for that? We didn't learn about that. Okay, so here it's talking about that it just looks like it's inside. Reb Tarfon says, no, being in the doorway means that you're outside. Oh, outside furniture. Outside furniture, even without an Erev, you can move around. Mana means a keli. A utensil of the courtyard. You're moving it in the courtyard. Okay, so it doesn't have to be that it's an old Mishnah. It could be it's a new Mishnah, and the discussion is where there's no Erev. Meducha, what about Meducha? The grinder, the mortar and pestle. We said that you can only move it if there's garlic in it. It says that could be Reb Nechemia. That could be the opinion of Reb Nechemia that holds that that any utensil, he has his own opinion, that any utensil is only allowed to be used for its original purpose that utensil's for. And this is a meducha, is a grinder. You'll never have a heter. Because what's its original use? Grinding. You can't use it to sit on it. Even if it would be a spoon, I couldn't use it to do something else. I don't know what. So everything needs to have its use. So that's why the grinder you can't move, but not because it's an old Mishnah. It has its a different opinion. Okay. Now we learn kol hakelim nitalim l'tzarech v'shlei l'tzarech. All utensils could be moved for its own purpose, l'tzarech, for necessary purposes, and shlei l'tzarech, and for not necessary purposes. You have to see what that means, not necessary purpose. What is it exactly does that mean?
Sorry. It's on my dad's background. Sorry.
Reb Nechemia says, Eini talam el l'tzarech. Reb Nechemia says, no, only for its own purpose. That's the Reb Nechemia that we just quoted a minute ago. Okay, the Gemara is going to explain this Mishnah. What does it mean when we said that everyone holds l'tzarech is mutter, necessary for its own purpose? However, shlei l'tzarech, that's a machlekes. The Tanna Kama says yes, and Rabbi Nechemia says no. So what is the case of shlei l'tzarech? What's that they're arguing about? What's the case of l'tzarech that they agree about? Amar Rabbi. Rabbi says it gets confusing over here if you change the name. On the side it says that it's supposed to be Abaya. It could be Rabbi as well, as we'll see. But whatever the case is, if it says Abaya, it fits with yesterday's Gemara. Yesterday we had a machlekes between Abaya and Rava about the order of what things became permissible that were muktzah. Rabbi says l'tzairech. What does it mean l'tzairech? That everyone agrees you're allowed to move it l'tzairech, a utensil on Shabbos. That's a utensil that's permissible, and you're moving it for a permissible purpose. You have a spoon and you're using it to eat, or for any other purpose that's permissible. Shalai l'tzairech. What are they arguing about? That's davar shemalach delehet l'tzairech mekayme. If the spoon is on your chair and you want to sit there, so that's machlekes. According to the Tanna Kama, you're allowed to move it because bein l'tzarech, bein shlei l'tzarech. According to Reb Nechemia, no, you can't move it. You're only allowed to move it if you want to use it to eat. Just because it's on your chair and you want to sit down, you can't move it. Davar shemalach de le'isr. What about keli shemalach de le'isr? That means a utensil, let's say a hammer, normally used for carpentry or something. So l'tzarech gufayin. If you're going to use it for something that's mutter, the example that we gave yesterday was to crack a nut, which you're allowed to do on Shabbos. So even though the hammer is a keli shemalach de le'isr, but you're allowed to move it to crack the nut. However, l'tzarech mekayme lai, but not to. You're not allowed to move it l'tzarech mekayme. So what do we have here? Keli shemalach de leheter, a spoon. You can move l'tzarech or shlei l'tzarech. Keli shemalachta le'iser is l'tzairach, but not shalei l'tzairach. That's all in the Tanakama. The kol ha'kelim nitelim l'tzairach, shalei l'tzairach, doesn't include keli shemalachta le'iser in the Tanakama. Because shalei l'tzairach mekayma, you're not allowed to move it. If you need the chair and there's a hammer on it, you're not allowed to move it. What does Reb Nechemia hold? Even a keli shemalachta, even a spoon or a knife that's on the chair that you use regular for your eating, you're only allowed to move if you want to use the knife. Just because you want to sit down, you're not allowed to move it. It's not l'tzairach. It's not for its own purposes. Amalei Rava says to Rabbi, wow, this is the first time in Shas I see this. Rava, we don't have any conversations of Rava to Rabbi unless you switch it. Unless you say it's a baya. Yeah, in the Sefer it told us to name Amiraim from Aaron Hyman. He wrote that there's no conversations in Shas between Rava and Rabba. He doesn't explain what happened, but there's no there's machlekasin, but they don't actually talk. Amalei.
Didn't we have another Rava yesterday?
Yeah, that was Rava with Abaya.
That wasn't the same Rava at the time of...
Oh, you're talking about Rava. Yeah, you're talking about the other Rava. Oh, that's interesting. Yeah, Rava Breda Rabba.
Yeah. Was he a contemporary that he could have had the conversation? So maybe that's the Rava they're talking about?
Yeah, that's interesting. I don't want to use that because that complicates things worse than they already are.
Forget I said anything.
Okay. So Rabbi says, he asks to Rabba, or it could be Abaya. He is asking to Abaya. It depends on the girsa. He says, if you need to sit down, that's considered not necessary, that not for its purpose. If I need to move it, you need to move it. 1 second. I have to stop for 1 second. My son is leaving. Just give me 1 moment.
Dr. Stein, now it's time to tell us funny jokes. No, you have to unmute. Come on, start it. Two guys walked into a bar. Come on.
First of all,
that's too basic for my dad, please. Two guys walked into a bar.
Come on, Dr. Stein, give us something good.
I heard a funny, what do you call it?
Joke. A joke.
Who's a Jewish comedian that's so popular for 50 years, with the Catskills, and he always makes fun of the Gentiles. Jackie Mason. No, so he was making fun of Farrakhan, is that his name? Whatever, the Reverend, one of those guys that always comes out there. And he said that after the summer, when certain people won't have jobs, there'll be riots. So we better make sure they have jobs. So to be continued. He said you'd never find out with yeshiva boys. Goodbye.
We had Dr. Stein telling us jokes.
Okay, thank you. Filling in. So Rava says to Rabba, he says that's what you're calling shlei l'tzairach because when you need the place. Elam Rava says it's a different story. L'tzairach, what does it mean? That's things that are necessary. That's davar shemalachta leheter. Things that are permissible, for example, a spoon or a knife or a fork. Bein l'tzairach gufa, bein l'tzairach makam. All of that is considered l'tzairach. Whether you need the place or you need the or you need to use it. Shalei l'tzarech. What does it mean when it's not necessary? That's vafilu chama l'tzel. You're allowed to move it out of the sun if it's going to get ruined. It's not for your purpose. It's for its purpose, to protect it. That you're allowed to do. That's what the Mishnah says. You're allowed to move it from the sun to the shade. Tzel means shade. But when it's coming to something, a Eily, that's used for prohibited things, in. If it's yes. So he's allowing for a Eily shemalachta l'isser. That's a difference here between Rabba and Rava, which yesterday was the difference between Abaya and Rava. In other words, replace Rabba with Abaya. Where Rava allows l'tzarech mekaymai. You need the place. You have the hammer on the chair. You're allowed to move it. But if your hammer is outside in the yard, and it's going to get ruined because it's in the sun and it just rained or whatever, you're afraid it's going to get rusty, that you're not allowed to move. So what does Rabbi Nechemia hold? Even something that's permissible. A spoon or a knife or a fork, a regular utensil. Extra leniency here. Rabbi Nechemia holds you're allowed to move it if you need the seat. There's a knife or a fork or a spoon on a chair. You're allowed to move it because you want to sit down. That's considered l'tzarech. But if you left the knife and the fork outside, you're not allowed to move it inside. You don't need it. You just want to protect it. In Shabbos, you're not allowed to do that. That's Rabbi Nechemia's opinion. Okay, it gets spelled out a little bit clearer in the following story. Yosef Rav Safra v'Ravacha bar Huna v'Rav Huna bar Chinina. These Amirayim are sitting Rav Safra, Ravacha bar Huna, Rav Huna bar Chanina, v'Yasi v'Kamri, and they're saying the following. L'Rabba liba de Rabbi Nechemia. Rabbi Nechemia held that he was more strict with muktzah. He held you're only allowed to move kelim l'tzarech. Now, Rabbi said that, what does it mean l'tzarech? You're allowed to use utensils that are necessary. He said that that only means for its own purpose, but not if you need the place. That's how Rabbi learned. Now, if you need the place, then we made a difference. If it's Keli Shemlachta Leheter, then you're allowed to move it. That's what it means, Shalei L'Tzarech, you're allowed to move it. If it's Keli Shemlachta Lissa, then you're not allowed to move it if you need the place. And Rabbi Nechemia holds that even the Keli Shemlachta Leheter, you're not allowed to move it if you need the place. So he asks the following question. L'Rabba Libed Rabbi Nechemia, according to the way Rabbi learns Rabbi Nechemia, you're not allowed to move something just because you need the place if you don't need it itself, even if it's heter. I guess they just ate the meal. They're looking at the dishes on the table. And they said, how are we allowed to move the dishes into the kitchen sink? We don't need the dishes now. We want them out of here because the dirty dishes on the table. But that's tzarech mekaymai, because we want the place. We want the place to be clean, but I don't need the dishes. Now, I know the dishes are not muktzah, but according to Rabbi Nechemia, they are. Because, what does it mean not muktzah? According to Rabbi Nechemia, it means that you need to use it. But l'tzarech mekaymai, according to Rabbi Nechemia, the way Rabbi learns from Nechemia, you can't move it. Amalu Rav Safra media graf shel rei. Rav Safra says, no, you're even according to Rabbi Nechemia, dirty dishes on the table, you'd be allowed to move. Because, just like you're allowed to move a chamber pot because of kavod abrius, so the dirty dishes you're allowed to move also. Amalei Abaya le Rabba. Abaya says to Rabba, Lemar, according to the master, according to you, Aliba de Rabbi Nechemia. According to Rabbi Nechemia, Hanikar Seichem Metal Tlinelu. And as he asked the question directly. This is Abai asked him directly. Amalei, so Rabbi answered, Rav Safra Chavrin, Tirgama Midi Dehavia Graf Shel Rei. Rav Safra answered how to learn this. Rav Safra, my friend, our friend, he answered that you're allowed to move it just like you're allowed to move a chamber pot. Abai asks Rava the following question. Meducha, again, Rava holds that you're allowed to move keli shemalachti leheter, a utensil that's permissible. You're allowed to move it l'tzarech gufay mekaymai and mechama l'tzel. Keli shemalachti leheter, if it's not permissible utensil like a hammer or a grinder, let's say, as it's going to come up, you're allowed to move it l'tzarech gufay mekaymai. You're allowed to move it if you need it for a different usage, or its place. You're only not allowed to move it from the sun to protect it. That's Rava's opinion. So Abai asks him, and this is a question we had yesterday, possibly twice. It says, grinder, if it has garlic in it, you're allowed to move it. If not, you're not allowed to move it. Why are you not allowed to move it? According to you, you should be always allowed to move the grinder. He says, no, that's not true. You're not allowed to move it to protect it. That's talking about because it was left in the sun. You're not allowed to move it inside. Yeah, if it was on your chair, you're allowed to move it. Or if you wanted to turn it upside down and sit on it, you would be allowed to do it. But here it's in the sun, so you're not allowed to move it. Esrei, same question we had yesterday. After the meat was cut on this board that was used as a pestle, you're not supposed to move that board. What's the problem with moving the board? You need it for a different purpose. You need it out of the place. You want to move it. It's in your spot. So what's the problem? According to Rava, you should be allowed to move it. Rava answers that it's because it's in the sun. You're not allowed to move it to protect it. See, Shabbos, we had all these things about the fire, and you're not allowed to save things and all of that. Shabbos makes us focus that it's not about our money. It's not about our possessions. Life is important, and Hashem is important. And you have an item that happens to be in the sun. It doesn't mean that's more important than Shabbos. What is it? It's just a utensil. Okay. V'had Tanan, and this that it taught in the Mishnah, Ein Simcha Seder Bibikas. Okay, here's a block of wood that on Yom Tov, it could be used as firewood. You can't put a pot on it. And you also can't put a door. If there's a door, you can't rest the door on it. On this, apparently this wood is muktzah. So v'habikas, but this piece of firewood, to be Yom Tov davar shemalachta leheter. On Yom Tov, I'm allowed to make a fire. So this is not muktzah. Alma, but what comes out is davar shemalachta leheter bein letzarech gufay bein letzarech mekaymei aser. I can't use it for itself. For its own, not for its own purpose, I could burn it, but I can't use it for a different purpose. I can't use it to hold a pot as like a trivet or something. And I can't use it, why not? We're talking about on Yom Tov. Why can't I use it? It must be a keli shemalachta leheter. It's not allowed to be used. That's very strict. Who holds that? The Gemara says, Hassam, my time over there is a special reason. What's the reason? Given the Shabbos davar shemalachta leheter, because on Shabbos this block is muktzah. So Gzeira Yom Tov after Shabbos. There's a Gzeira of Yom Tov because of Shabbos. I guess maybe if we're allowed to use it on Yom Tov, maybe you'll use it on Shabbos. I guess that's the Gzeira. The Gemara says, 1 second. One second. Why is it Gzeira? Because you might use it on Shabbos. On Shabbos, you're allowed to use it anyway. What is it? It's a piece of wood. I can use it. It's a keli shemalachta l'isser, right? I shouldn't say keli. Let me say that differently. It's a davar shemalachta l'isser. It's an item. not a utensil, but it's an item that's used for burning. And I'm allowed to use items that are used for something that's prohibited for permissible use. Like we said before about a hammer, I can use a hammer. Why can't I use this as a trivet for my pot? The Gemara answers, you're allowed to use a hammer to break a nut open. That's a forbidden utensil for something that's permissible. That you're allowed to do. But you're not allowed to use a block of wood to hold a pot, because that's a forbidden item, not a forbidden utensil. Utensils have the leniency that you're allowed to use them for permissible uses, but not items that are not utensils, and the block of wood is not a utensil. But if it's not considered keli, then no. Earlier today we mentioned that that lock or a peg that goes into a door, that at the end of it was really a press, a garlic press. You would use it to pound garlic. So the Mefarshim explain that that instrument there, based on this Gemara, that you get a leniency when you turn it into a vessel. It could have been just a block of wood that wasn't really a vessel, but now that it's a vessel, a utensil, then it becomes an item that has these extra leniencies. So even though the utensil of it is prohibited, so that's the interesting thing. The utensil is prohibited, but just the fact that it has a usage it gives you more leniency on Shabbos than if it had no usage at all. So let's say a lighter, a lighter to light something, would be more of have more leniencies of moving it. I don't know what you're going to use it for, but more leniencies of using it than the twig that you were going to light. Similar type things, whatever it is. Okay, why? Because the one is a utensil and one is not a utensil. Okay, the Gemara now says, Amigos Rinan, is there such a concept of making the Gezerah because of Yom Tov? It looks like Shabbos, you may end up doing it on Shabbos. V'atanan, it's a Mishnah, it says, Mashilim Peres Derech Haruba Yom Tov Avalei B'Shabbos. If you put fruits on the roof to dry, however, you see that the clouds are coming, it's going to rain, you're allowed to take them down on Yom Tov. Now, that's a lot of work. On Shabbos, you're not allowed to. It's too much work. That's a regular weekday work. On Yom Tov, you're allowed to take them through a skylight. So that's, you see, things that are prohibited on Shabbos are permissible on Yom Tov. We don't make a decree. If you're going to allow it on Yom Tov, the good people are going to do it on Shabbos. You don't say that. You say, no, on Yom Tov it's allowed, on Shabbos it's not. So the same thing should be with the block of wood. On Yom Tov it's allowed, on Shabbos it's not. Why do we have to make a gezerah? You don't make gezerahs from Shabbos to Yom Tov. The Gemara asks the opposite. We don't make gezerahs. We have a Mishnah. There's only certain things you're allowed to do on Yom Tov. Everything else is prohibited. Why? Because we're scared that it's similar to Shabbos. And there is a gezerah. There is a gezerah from Shabbos to Yom Tov that only eichel nefesh, only things that are directly for food, for things that you need. I'm Rabbi Yosef of Lake Kasha. Okay, you brought two Mishnayos. They seem to be contradictory. How do we answer a contradiction? We say it's two different opinions. Har Rabbi Lezer, Har Rabbi Yeshua. It's machlekes Rabbi Lezer and Rabbi Yeshua. The Tanya, started in a brayso, we had this recently. It has to do with if there's a potential loss of money, do we allow you to do a trick to save this loss? You have a mother and child animal that fell into a pit. Now you're only allowed to shecht one of them on the same day. You can't shecht both on the same day. That's the rule. And it's Yom Tov, and you're allowed to shecht on Yom Tov. You're allowed to have fresh beef on Yom Tov, and they're in the pit. So I can take one out to shecht it. What about the other one? So Rabbi Lezer Memalas Rishon Al Manas L'Shecht. The Rabbi Lezer says, take out the first one to shecht. V'sheichte and yeshechte. V'asheni etzlei parnasim m'kem b'shos layamas. The second one, you send food down into the pit so that the animal should have what to eat, and you'll get it up after Shabbos. You're not allowed to take it up. It's muktzah. You can't shecht it. Rabbi Yeshua Memalas Rishon Al Manas L'Shecht. V'ena shechte. U'marim Memalas Hasheni. Rabbi Yeshua says, no, you take up the first one. You say, I'm going to shecht it. You take it up. You look at it, you say, yeah, I'm not going to shecht it. I want to shecht the other one. You see that, and look down into the pit. There's another one there. You just take that one up. And once they're both up, then you have a choice which one to shecht. So you did a trick when you brought the first one up. You said, maybe I'll shecht it, or I want to shecht it. Then you change your mind. So Rabbi Yeshua holds that you're allowed to do a trick to get to save yourself from this potential loss of maybe you're going to lose the animal. How does that compare to us? So we said over here that we have a Mishnah that says you're allowed to lower the dried fruits in through the roof to protect them because it's about to rain. Well, that would be Rabbi Yeshua's opinion. The one that says that you're not allowed to do anything on Yom Tov except Eichel Nefesh, that would be Rabbi Eliezer's opinion. That says there are no tricks. You can't do any tricks. We don't care about the possible loss. Where it says Mimai, how do you know that that's the case? Dilmad kan lekam Rabbi Lezer Hasam. How do you know? Maybe Rabbi Lezer only says over there that you don't lift up the other animal because he's not concerned of a loss. Ela de'efshel parnasa, because he can give it food and everyone's going to be fine. Aval heicha de'efshel parnasa. But let's say there would really be a loss if you don't raise that animal up. So let's give the example. You have fruits on a roof that it's about to rain. And if it gets wet, they're going to get spoiled. They'll turn moldy instead of drying. So if you don't lower them down, there'll be a loss. We wanted to say Rabbi Lezer holds you're not allowed to lower them down. How do you know? Rabbi Lezer's opinion was only where you can give food to the animal and it will survive. Over here, these fruits are not going to survive. Rabbi Lezer would agree. So you're trying to tell me it's a machlekes Rabbi Lezer and Rabbi Yeshua. It's not so. Rabbi Lezer would agree to that case. For example, by the fruits. Rabbi Yeshua says over there that you're allowed to lift up the other animal, because that trick is halachically acceptable. It's a halachic loophole, but it exists. But if there is no possible trick, maybe he won't allow it. So therefore, maybe Rabbi Yeshua would hold that he can't put the things through the roof, the fruits through the roof. Or maybe he holds the other brisa that says, the other Mishnah that says the only things you're allowed to do on Yom Tov is Eichel Nefesh, is things that are directly for food. Elamar of Papa says like Kasha. It's not Rebbe Les, it's not Rabbi Yeshua, because over there it's too easy to get out of that machlekes and to say that they agree in those two cases. It's machlekes Beisham and Beisil. It's more of a famous machlekes. Titnan, started in the Mishnah, Beisham Yaimrim. We're on top of page 124b. In Meitzin as a cotton as a lulav as a sefer terlish as a rabbin. Beisham says that you're not allowed to carry out things that are not food items into Rosh Hashanah. It's not necessary. Basil says you're allowed to. We follow Basil on Yom Tov. We carry everything to show. You carry you this, you that. According to Beishami, you're not allowed to carry all those things. Carrying is aser. Can't carry. Why do we think carrying is mutter? Because we follow Basil. That Basil says mitoich shechutra l'tzayrach, because things that are necessary, you have a kugel or a challah or something that you're going to eat somewhere, that you're allowed to carry. So once it becomes permissible, we allow all carrying, even shlei l'tzayrach. But as long as it's a tzarech hayom, as long as it's something to do with Yom Tov. But Beishami says, no, you're not allowed to carry those things. Okay, so now we can explain that Beishami holds very strict that the only things you're allowed to do on Yom Tov are things that are Eichel Nefesh. That's the Mishnah that says that Yom Tov is Ein ben Yom Tov l'Shabbos Eichel Nefesh b'lvad. The whole difference between Yom Tov and Shabbos is only those specific things that have to do with cooking food, carrying food, or something like that. But other things are not, because there is a Gzeira, Yom Tov to Shabbos, that it's similar. Maybe it's more than a Gzeira. But Beis Hillel would allow it. Gemara says, okay, Beis Shammai is strict about Eitzah. Tiltul mishamatlu. Do we know that there's a gzeira of tiltul because of tiltul means movement, moving things that are muktzah on Yom Tov because it's similar to Shabbos? I know you're not allowed to carry things that are not necessary on Yom Tov, just like you're not allowed to carry on Shabbos. But what about muktzah? What about that block of wood that you said that you can't put a pot on it, use it as a trivet, because it's similar to Shabbos? Beis Shammai would say that you can't do that because of muktzah. Where it says v'tiltul gufei la mishum eitzah. 1 second. The whole problem of muktzah is because you might end up carrying it outside. It's an interesting statement. So therefore, muktzah is the beginning of carrying, and if you're not allowed to carry, so that laws of muktzah, that Beis Shammai, the laws of eitzah that Beis Shammai is so strict about, would apply also to muktzah. Now the Gemara says, "Va'af Rav savra la lahad Rava." Rav also holds like Rava. What was Rava's opinion? That l'tzerech mekaymai, you're allowed to move. If you need the place, you're allowed to move a keli shemalachtalis. You're allowed to move a hammer if you need the place. It's on your seat. Damar Rav, because Rav said mar. This is some sort of hoe, some sort of utensil, instrument, a tool. Shelo yiganev, so that it shouldn't get stolen. You left it outside. This could happen. Someone leaves a tool, an expensive tool outside on Shabbos. It's all concerned. Now, if that tool would be on your chair, you'd be allowed to move it.
It's not a problem in North Miami Beach because it'll just be gone.
You have to be careful. He says that if you move it so it shouldn't get stolen, that's not necessary. And it's forbidden to move it. Taima, what's the reason why you can't move it? Because you didn't want it to get stolen. But if you needed to sit on that spot, you would be allowed to move it. Then it would be mutter. You see, Rav holds tzarech mekayim is mutter. You're allowed to move a hammer if you want to sit down. Eily, is it really so? Rav Kana was in the house of Rav. Rav Kana was that student of Rav. It was one time under his bed when he hid under his bed when Rav was with his wife. He said he wants to study Torah. Everything that Rav does is Torah. This is the Kana that's a student of Rav. Later on, he went to Eretz Yisrael to learn by Rabbi Yochanan. He was a great teacher. Rav Kana ikla bei Rav, and he said, "Isali shusa lekana, bring a net or a trap for Rav Kana." He was going to sit down, and I guess has a chair or something. So bring him a trap. I'll sit on the trap. Leisivalas, for him to sit. Lav lamemra, is that not to say the davar shemalachta litzal tzarech kufayin l'tzarech mekayim elai? He wanted to use it to sit on it. But if it would have been there and it was just in your place, then you wouldn't have been allowed to move it. Umar says no. It was exactly the opposite. Move the trap away from Rav Kana so he can sit down. Rav holds that l'tzarech mekayim as well. If you want, you could say differently. Over there, the reason why he said bring it so he could sit down was because it was in the sun and it was going to get ruined. So he said bring it so he could sit down on it. That was a way of using an item to save it from the sun. It's a way of using it. But if you use it, you're able to move it.
Is that considered orma?
Yeah, but apparently that was, according to this Gemara, that was acceptable. Right? Yeah, Rashi says that's why he had to explain what he was doing so that people shouldn't think that it was Bilav the Parish Behedya, Leisavala, Mandachazisav Mechamed Sal Shari. Yeah, I'm not sure if it's direct harama or he just didn't want anyone to think that it was Mechamel itself. I'm not sure. Okay. Rav Mari Barachel, we've learned about Rav Mari Barachel. He was a grandson of Shmuel. His mother, Rachel, was abducted. She married, I forgot his name, Isi Giura, or something. That was the abductor. She married the person that. And anyway, this child, Mari, was the...
Gemara, we don't usually use the mother's name.
That's right. That's why. Because the father wasn't Jewish. Over here we use the mother's name. That's so. Havalehu beis sadusa b'shimsha. How do they translate sadusa? It's something that's made out of maybe like linen or something delicate. It was in the sun.
It's felt pillows.
Felt pillows. Okay.
Picture's the closest I could get.
Very good. Okay. Asalakami de Rava. He comes to Rava. Amalei, can I move them? They're in the sun. They're going to get ruined. Amalei Shari. He says, yeah, it's no problem. You can go ahead and move it. Now, Rava holds you're allowed to move. Things that are permissible, even Mechamal Etzel. It was only things that were not permissible. So this is Rava's opinion. So he came to Rava. However, he doesn't let up. He says, Isli Achrina. I have other pillows inside. I don't really need them. So he says, well, Chazal Archim. Maybe guests are going to come and you'll need them. He says, Isli Nami Larchim. I happen to have for guests as well. So he's really pushing. He didn't take his answer and leave. He asked the question again. Amralei, Rava says, Galis Adaitach, the Karabba Sviralach. You must hold like Rabba. And if it's not necessary, you can't do it. If you don't need it, you're just trying to save it, you can't do it. That's Rabba and Abaya's opinion. L'kuli al mashari, I would allow it for everyone, but l'didach it's asr, for you it's prohibited. Because you hold like Rabba. Amar Rab Abba, Amar Rab Chia Barashi, Amar Rav, Machbida shel milsa, mutal letaltal b'Shabbos. This is also a statement in the name of Rav, that a broom, a soft broom, you're allowed to move on, it's a cloth that's used to clean the table. You're allowed to move it on Shabbos because you're allowed to clean the table. I will show tomorrow light, but if it's made of palm branches, you can't move it on Shabbos because sweeping the floor, a dirt floor on Shabbos with a straw broom is going to fill in the holes and it's going to make the floor straight. There's a problem there. Rabbi Lazar, I'm afshel tomorrow. Rabbi Lazar says you're also allowed to move a broom. Maya skinan. What are we dealing with? Are we dealing with that you need to use it for something or it's in your place? Rav says that you're not allowed to move it. Rav holds like Rava. You're allowed to move things that are prohibited. If you need it or need the place. It's talking about that it was in the sun. Rav holds you're not allowed to move it from the sun to protect it. But so Rabbi Lazar holds that you're allowed to move it. No one holds that you're allowed to rescue a keli shemalach delisser. You have a lawnmower, you left it outside. I'm allowed to move it in because it's starting to rain and it's Shabbos. So loyla mechamal etzel. Really, it's talking about. He is talking about to save it from the sun. But however, ema v'cheinam Rabbi Lazar. Rabbi Lazar says that you're not allowed to move it. Not that you are allowed to move it. You're not allowed to move it. You switch that. Okay, I'll leave it over here. Have a good day, everyone.
Happy birthday.